All right. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being here. Let's just jump right in. Whether you're a developer, contractor, designer, or facility manager, chances are you're seeing the same things we are. Technology is changing the way buildings are designed, built, and managed. But here's the truth. Most commercial real estate professionals are still trying to figure it out as they go. That's why we created Layer 10 and the Layer 10 Academy. So you don't just keep up, but you lead. Now, by the end of this masterclass, Build Spaces People Love, I aim to have equipped you with new ideas and actionable insights into this overlooked component of CRE development. I get it. IT is scary. It's expensive. It never works as it's promised. It's misunderstood. So it gets ignored, gets shrugged aside. Like the proverbial can, it gets kicked down the road and not picked up until it's too late. And in many cases, never at all. Smart buildings sound great until you're in the middle of a build with no plan for the tech. Technology is considered too late, vendors push conflicting agendas, and no one owns the process. The result? Frustration, budget overruns, broken user experiences. We decided to fix that. You may have seen me on stage, heard me on podcasts, or read me on CNN.com, Colorado Real Estate Journal, or follow my LinkedIn newsletter. But for those of you who are meeting me for the first time, my name is Ken Wilkinson. I'm the founder and CEO of Layer 10. We are the creators of the Layer 10 method and the Layer 10 Academy. Also, along with my wife Zara, we are the co-board presidents of Trailhead Community, a nonprofit building housing for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I'm also, as so many appear to be these days, an aspiring author of Bricks to Brilliance, Designing Buildings That Think. But the most important thing to know about me is that I am passionate about creating people-first spaces that are functional, sustainable, and that create the best possible experience for the people who use them. Now, our journey down this path begins in 2012, 4 years before we founded Layer 10. I was working for another consulting firm at the time, and I was assigned to project manage the IT components of an office build for an existing client. Commercial real estate was a space I had zero experience in. Even IT infrastructure was a stretch. It was outside of my comfort zone. I came up as a software guy. But despite my discomfort and leveraging the years of consulting and learning how to be comfortable in uncomfortable positions, I quickly fell in love with the work. I found the opportunity to be part of building something, to see the physical manifestations of my efforts, a rarity in consulting, was amazing, exhilarating. In fact, it reminded me of what I had first gone to school for, which was coincidentally to study architecture at the University of Florida. Go Gators. It didn't take me long to realize I was not cut out for that field. At that age, I lacked the discipline and, frankly, the overwhelming why to survive that grind and turn myself into an architect. For those of you on the call who made it through, my hat is off to you. It's a beautiful industry. Just, I was not ready for that at 18 years old. But this work on the office build gave me the opportunity to realize some of those dreams. It proved to be the most fulfilling work I had ever done. And I learned something about myself. I have a passion for building things, for creating something new, for identifying problems and finding solutions. And I had found no better place to exercise those passions than at the intersection of technology and the built environment. Now, fast forward about 3 years, I had left the firm I was working for and got a real job outside of consulting, as we say. But about 18 months into that job, I realized I was not cut out to be anything but a consultant. And around that time, I got a call from that same client I worked for on that office building. They invited me back to tackle Tower 2, their next office building they were building across the street. I jumped at the opportunity and was brought on as an independent consultant. Man, I was so happy to be doing that work again, not just consulting, but within this niche, technology implementation for CRE construction. It also gave me the opportunity to apply the lessons I learned working on Tower One, to tackle the thoughtlessness and lack of attention to detail in the technology design, how to work around space design flaws from an IT perspective, simple things that get missed, stacking IDFs, low volt run lengths, and most importantly, to focus on the employee experience. Now, being back in that environment gave me the inspiration to launch the consulting firm Layer 10 that focuses on solely on integrating technology into the built environment. And Layer 10 Consulting was born. I partnered with a former colleague and we started socializing the idea with architects, contractors, and developers in the Cree space. To a person, they all loved it. They couldn't wait for us to get off the ground. Honestly, we found their enthusiasm for the idea a little concerning. How is it that we were the first to think about this? And to this day, we have not found anybody who does what we do the way we do it, following our principles and our method, which I will talk about shortly. So we went for it. In 2016, we launched Layer 10. We knew we were onto something special in an early sales meeting, actually. It's a story I tell often. It was our first or second year in business, and we received our very first inbound sales call and email as a result of an article that was published about me, an interview about me in BizNow. And his email read, "My name is Sean. Here's a link to the project we're working on, Miller's Landing. I think I need your help. Call me." Along with his phone number, that was the entire message. We arranged to meet in the brand spanking new lobby of our client, that first client, and one of our only two clients at that time. And this gave me the opportunity to not only tell what we do, but to show what we do. We didn't leave the lobby. It was really just a snapshot of our work that was represented in that space. And of course, it didn't hurt that it was a beautiful and still is a beautiful space. And it still had that new office smell. And after that quick tour, we walked across the street for lunch. And after the server took our order, I turned to Sean and began the pitch with one question: why do you want Miller's Landing to be a smart city? That was all I asked. He paused, leaned back in his chair, and said, "You know what, Ken? I've been talking to," and he named three big names in the smart city space, all names you would recognize, vendors who build smart city technology, good companies, good products, products we recommend to our clients. And he said, "Not one of them has asked me that question. All they do is walk in and tell me everything I need to buy from them to make my project successful. You're the first person who asked about me, and that's why I need you on the team." So you can see why I share this story. It took that single question, why? And that was the final light bulb moment for me, the moment that made me realize that we were truly onto something. We were already a couple of years into the firm at that point. We were seeing success, we were growing our revenue. But you have those little moments in your journey as an entrepreneur that confirm your vision and accelerate your growth. And it made me realize what was missing from the commercial real estate process, the why. Technology is expensive. Technology can be challenging, it can be difficult and frustrating. What we bring to the table is a structure, a methodology, some common sense to select the appropriate technology for our clients' needs. And we do so by giving IT a seat at the design table in order to select the right technology and the right team, dependent not on the latest and greatest gadgetry, not on sales incentives, not on gimmicks that might not survive market trends. Technology selected to satisfy our clients' unique needs, depending on what the space is trying to achieve and for whom it is intended to serve, not on what I'm incented to sell. We built a model that aligns our success with theirs, not aligned with how much we can sell, but with the experience we create. That is the root of our business. And for the following 6 years, our proof was in the fruit. Over that period, we enjoyed a 100% client retention rate. That is not an exaggeration, a 100% client retention rate. That first client, that first office we built, is still an active client to this day. For every new client, once we delivered on the first project, we became an assumed member of the team for every client and every project from day one. Now, this year, we're happy to announce the Layer 10 Academy, where you will learn our secrets, our principles, our framework, the how and the why of what we do and why we do it. Cree is in the middle of a transformation. Technology in physical space is now expected. It is not optional. Whether you're designing an office, hotel, or an entire planned communities, buildings must be smarter, more efficient, more intuitive. And the people who lead that evolution, they will own the future of the built world. So let's start with our guiding principles. We launched Layer 10 with a goal of improving how technology is integrated into physical space. We built our methodology around three simple guiding principles: design first, human-centered, product agnostic. These human-centered design principles are not new to commercial real estate development and the creative fields that surround it. When starting a project, we always begin with an understanding of who we're building for, the experience we want them to have, the purpose, the why, and we build the space around that. We do this with all the disciplines surrounding the build. The space itself, of course, the interior finishes, even the landscaping gets its attention. And yet, IT is left on the outside looking in. Perhaps that's because it isn't considered a creative field. But Layer 10 is in the business to change that mindset, to bring the same design discipline to the technology layer of the built environment. It's an embarrassingly obvious solution that is shockingly underutilized. We begin with the design. This is where we dream. How big can we dream? How can we create insanely great experiences? We often call this the art of the possible. And what we're designing here is the vision of what the space could be, what the future could look like. But that design means nothing if it isn't centered on the end user, centered on the human being who will be using the space. To have success in this arena, you have to be radically committed to this human experience. The technology products themselves are a means to the end, a highly functional and adaptable physical space. We don't lead with the product. Through our design, we land on the product. People don't desire specific technologies even when they think they do. What they truly desire is a result, what they can do with the technology, in this case, within the space they occupy. And I feel like these principles are well summarized by a quote from Guy Kawasaki, who said, "The purpose of innovation is not cool products and cool technologies, but happy people." So how do we put these principles into practice? This is the Layer 10 method, the DSDS Framework. It was George Bernard Shaw who said, "Imagination is the beginning of creation. You imagine what you desire, you will what you imagine, and at last you create what you will." Now, on the previous slide, we talked about the design focus and how we determine what could be done. And that effectively describes this first step in the framework. From there, we take what could be done and determine what should be done and select the appropriate technologies. We're talking about innovation, but innovation has nothing to do with how much you spend. It's about creating a great product, your space, with great experiences that end users will love. Keep in mind, sometimes the final decision is not the most innovative, not the most expensive product. Often we prioritize simplicity and uptime over sophistication. It is during the select phase that we consider the typical project constraints as well: timeline, budget, risk tolerance. How bleeding edge do you want to be? Do you want tried and true, or do you want to be first to market? But strategy without execution is like an idea that never gets put into practice. You hear it all the time. "Oh, I had that idea. I could have done that. I should have done that." They're worthless. Ideas are easy. Strategy without execution is the same. So from selection, we move on to the deployment phase. This is where the rubber meets the road, where the work moves from the suits to the boots. This is when all that planning and design and selection pays off in the execution. It's critical to ensure the proper leadership is in place to lead all the technology vendors in a cohesive and coordinated approach. We promote a deployment model that is very similar to that of the general contractor, with all of the technology integrators subcontracting through Layer 10 to provide that single throat to choke, single point of contact for all the technology that's being built into the space. And after go live, our attention turns to the support model. But in all honesty, that consideration begins at the beginning. We always have to remind ourselves that we're not just building for the building's occupants. It's just as important that the operators, the property management, facilities teams, are delivered a suite of products they're trained to use, and with a support plan that maintains operability and user engagement. Otherwise, you risk investing a lot of money on tools that aren't optimized if they're used at all. And now for our new segment, Technology in the Wild. This is where we look at examples of bad technology design. This is a very recent real life example. I was in the Baltimore airport on Saturday on a layover and this was just last week, and I saw this perfect illustration of elegant design without a focus on the human experience. As you can see here, there's a digital display. This is not actually, I didn't think to take a picture of it live in Baltimore. I was just ruminating on it as I was going to my gate. So I found this online. So this isn't this is doesn't it doesn't look exactly like this in Baltimore, but it's the same concept. This digital display telling you exactly how many toilets and urinals in the men's room are available for use. I guess you might call this the digital toilet occupancy system. Now, it's clear to me that this is born out of the smart parking system that identifies where there are spaces available in which garages on which floors. That's a very convenient and usable solution, very smart system. But what is the use case here? It's clear somebody said, let's take that idea and apply it to bathrooms. But I don't see the use case. So let's walk through a couple of scenarios so you can see how we attack problems like this and conversations like this. So let's say you're a traveler and you are in need of, let's say you are in need of relief. You leave your gate and you find the nearest restroom and you find this display on the outside. And there are three options, three scenarios. There is either excess availability, 8 toilets, 8 urinals available, limited availability, 2 and 3 maybe, or no availability. The sign reads 0 and 0. So in the first two scenarios, you haven't learned anything that gives you a decision. You're just going right in. In the third scenario, now you have a question you have to ask yourself, and you have to consider what your options are. Should I look for the next restroom? And if you're at DIA, the next restroom might be a quarter mile away. It might be at the next terminal. If you can hold it, you'll return to your gate and use the lavatory on the plane. If you can't, you're getting in line. Either way, this information isn't particularly helpful. It's an expensive solution with no payback. And the reason is there's an important data point missing. Anybody think of what that is? It's how many people are waiting for a toilet to become available. That's really the only thing I care about. How long is the line? And unless I see that line extending into the terminal, I'm going in. And guess what? In that instance, you're right now back where you would be with no technology at all. And there's another factor to consider, the creepy factor. I don't mind you knowing where my car is parked, but am I okay with you knowing where my butt is parked? This is the perfect example of technology for technology's sake, a slick solution with no use case. The moral of the story is sometimes analog is the answer. Just because we can do something doesn't mean we should. Now, you might be asking yourself, would a digital toilet occupancy system fall in layer 10 scope? The answer is yes. In a typical project, we are responsible for everything that needs an internet connection, everything that touches the network, including the network itself. Our scope covers a broad spectrum of technologies from networking and Wi-Fi to conference room audiovisual, physical security, and EV charging stations. How we get to that point, how we work with our clients to select those technologies is through day in the life of scenarios through the lens of these 5 technology dimensions you see here. This is the framework for how we walk our clients through that design process by considering the role technology plays in our lives through each of these dimensions: community, safety and security, sustainability, mobility, and service performance. Everything always done keeping the user experience at the center of the conversation. So I'd like to take a few minutes and share what this looks like in practice. And I'm using my favorite client, Trailhead Community. And I'll start with a story so you understand how they became my favorite client. So my relationship with Trailhead started in a what I would describe as a serendipitous meeting at a business conference. It was hosted by BizNow, and interestingly, the conference actually never happened on that day. It was a snowstorm that kept so many attendees and presenters away. After about 45 minutes, we decided to reschedule to a future date. But we were there, our booth was set up, and there were about 50 other people, mostly vendors, who were there in the room. The music was on, the coffee was hot, and before we started packing up our things, somebody came up and started going through our material. So I introduced myself, and the first thing he said was, "I think I need what you have." To which I responded, "That's a great place to start the conversation." And he started telling me about Trailhead. He was the architect that was designing the space at the time. And he's telling me about their mission. It's a nonprofit organization that's building housing for the intellectual and developmental disability community. These are neurodiverse adults who do not have the capacity to live a fully independent life. But with some support, this model will help them grow and live and create community. And this conversation happened with, of course, the architect having no way of knowing he was talking to the father of an autistic child. My daughter Audrey is 21 now. She was probably 16 or 17 at the time of this conversation. Of course, he had no way of knowing that as a parent of an autistic child, this is the thing that keeps you up at night. What happens to my daughter when her mother and I are not around to take care of her? Where is she going to go? And there are tens of thousands of adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities living with parents over the age of 60 in Colorado alone. And that number is multiplying. And there are very few public services available to support these kids. So, obviously, very shortly after that meeting, Trailhead became a client. And over time, as we went through the design and the build, I started getting more and more involved in the project beyond just my relationship with them as a vendor. My wife and I were invited to share a seat on the board, and since then we have been elected the co-board presidents. That's something that we take very, very seriously, is very dear to our hearts. Now, from a client perspective, the challenge we were faced with was applying the Layer 10 method to the neurodiverse community. How do we leverage technology in a space geared specifically to this vulnerable population? We identified the two most critical areas for the residents as community and safety and security. And in order to give you a snapshot of what this looks like, I'm going to focus on the safety and security to share some of those insights of how the process works. And one of the first things we noted is that our residents are actually not the only users we are designing for. Especially when it comes to resident safety, it's just as important to ensure the primary caregivers, we, the parents, feel safe and secure. For many of us, we're releasing our kids into the world, setting them out amidst the wolves, it seems, on their own for the first time. And this can be a scary proposition, often more for us than it is for them. And one of the first steps in the process is considering not just the occupant's needs, but the appropriate security posture for, in this case, a suburban apartment complex versus, say, an office in Pioneer Square, Seattle. I have a story about that too that I won't get into, maybe on a future broadcast. We need to consider the neighborhood, the surrounding businesses, and potential threats. Is the property surrounded by liquor stores and nightclubs, or parks and daycares? This information informs our decisions about security applications like access control and video monitoring. Even in regards to physical security, there is such a thing as too much. We also need to consider how to keep our residents safe within the building and within their units. Motion detection and video monitoring are things that we keep in mind. Utility monitoring IoT devices to identify things like appliances running too long or water overflowing. Video doorbells and smart home automation systems like Alexa. automated medication reminder boxes, and how do all these systems work together? And to go back to the parents, how do we empower the parents to remotely monitor their kids, to stay in touch with them, and to get that their own feeling of safety without being overbearing? And some of the challenges we faced in this project were specifically on the individual level is while there are, autism and neurodiversity is on a spectrum, so are things like tech literacy and user adoption. And there are varying levels of care. Not every person, that spectrum creates a different, what's good for the resident in unit 101 is not necessarily the same needs of the resident in 102. So what we developed was an opt-in strategy where we would focus on building the infrastructure into each space to support whatever end products might be needed. Now, from the property's perspective, this helped with some of the additional challenges that we have there. Trailhead is not 100% occupied by the neurodiverse population. It's about 50% IDD, and the remainder is split between active senior and affordable housing. So with this multi-generational and diverse ability population, we needed to have flexibility within the units. We didn't want to start off by identifying these 40 of the 80 units are the IDD units, these 20 of the remainder are for active senior, and the remaining 20 are, and they can never change. So that infrastructure that we designed needed to go into every unit. So we could flip from a senior to an IDD to an affordable housing unit. And of course, we were also challenged by the financial constraints in every project, especially in regards to technology and building affordably, but especially so with Trailhead as a 100% privately funded nonprofit organization. Now, one more update on Trailhead. We are live. We opened the building in Q4 of last year. We have about 20 to 25 residents who have moved in. We still have a handful of units for sale. We've got a laundry list of people waiting for rentals to come available. The building is half condo, half apartment. And we actually have a gala next Thursday night, and tickets are still available. So you can reach out to me and I can get you connected with that if this is connected with that, if this is something that speaks to you. So what's next for Layer 10? We believe that smart spaces are the future, and they're just getting smarter. But they're only smart if they are designed with intention. Through our structured training programs, we teach professionals how to think like Layer 10, enabling them to make better technology decisions, avoid costly mistakes, and lead the industry forward. Layer 10 Academy is more than just a training program, it's a movement to redefine the way technology is integrated into the built world. Our goal is to equip professionals with the knowledge and tools to turn technology from an afterthought into a core design element that enhances human experiences. And here are some of the objectives we're trying to achieve. Standardize excellence, to establish a new industry standard for technology integration in the built environment. Bridge the knowledge gap, to empower professionals who know they need to integrate technology but don't know where to start. Eliminate wasted investments, to help developers, architects, and designers avoid expensive, poorly integrated technology solutions. To future-proof careers and businesses, to equip professionals with cutting-edge knowledge that keeps you competitive in evolving industry, and to create certified experts. We will be offering our Layer 10 certification, giving professionals a recognizable credential that signals mastery in technology integration. And the Academy is designed for professionals across the entire ecosystem of the built environment, including developers, owners and operators, architects, design firms, facility managers, even technology integrators, engineering firms, and OEMs will gain value from the Academy. So whether you're a developer planning your next project, a contractor navigating new tech requirements, or an architect designing for the future, Layer 10 Academy is your key to staying ahead of the curve. Technology is no longer optional, it's essential. Layer 10 Academy ensures that you're not just keeping up, but leading the way. Now, since you've made it this far, I have a special gift for you. A free copy of my book, Bridging IT and Architecture, Giving IT a Seat at the Table. Within this, you will learn more about the principles of aligning IT and design from day one, to how to avoid costly mistakes and inefficiencies in your projects, how to create smarter, people first spaces that are future ready. So follow the link on the screen and download your copy now. So that's it. My final request, my final invitation for all of you is to stay connected. You can find us on all the typical social media platforms. You can follow Layer 10 and connect with me personally on LinkedIn. And while there, be sure to subscribe to our Building Tomorrow newsletter to stay on top of the latest trends. If you have any questions about Layer 10, our methodology, the Layer 10 Academy, or Trailhead, if that mission speaks to you, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're always looking for mission-driven individuals and companies looking to make a difference. I hope we achieved our objectives with you today and gave you some actionable insights to take into your field. Together, let's build tomorrow today. I wish you all the best. Stay blessed. We'll talk soon.